Welcome to the Mismatch. I'm Chris Vernon, and joining me as he does every week from TheRinger.com is Dave Jacoby. Jacoby!
Verno, I missed you, buddy. I didn't think I would. It's never happened to me before, but there was a part of me, because we didn't do a show on Tuesday. I was like, I want to talk to Verno. I want to catch up.
Well, I am glad that we didn't have to do the obligatory, how do we fix the All-Star Weekend?
All-Star
What's wrong with
sucks.
All-Star Weekend?
Everything sucks. I hate the NBA.
And I will say, there was a part of me that I was like, man, should I get on the microphone and like somewhat apologize for trying to gas up like, hey, maybe this is going to be good. I'm hopeful this is going to be good. And then it turning out to be literally the worst thing ever.
Well, I'll just say, and we can move on, but I'll say this is, it wasn't a format problem. As someone who's worked in sports television for 24 years, that was a poorly stacked and produced television show. That's what it was. It was just a poorly produced television show. It wasn't the format of the game that was the problem. It was the way the television show was presented to the audience. Those are my thoughts.
I knew it was going poorly when I was watching it. My son and his buddy, who are both 15 years old. So this is a good demographic, right?
Yeah. Bring them in.
At one point, Kevin Hart is out there and he is handing everybody from TNT fishing poles, and they look over at me and they go, what is going on? I was like, I don't.
I'm watching it being like, it's like I feel like they were like we were at a funeral, and like the guy in the casket was like, I'm not dead. I'm not dead. We're gonna see the Inside the NBA guys next year and in the future for years to come. We're not saying goodbye to these people. That's honestly, it felt like someone in the casket just screaming, like knocking on the casket, be like, I'm not dead in here. Stop eulogizing me.
So, all right, I'm gonna do glass half full once more and say that a couple of weeks ago, WWE had their big Netflix debut, and they obviously went all out with the Netflix debut. Like, everybody came back. They made it like the biggest deal ever. It's like, hey, we're making our announcement. This is where this product is going to be, and here's why you are going to watch it and want to watch it. And so they made a huge deal out of it. I can only hope that next year, when we hear Round Ball Rock and this is on NBC, that, this was like the last of the who cares, because it's not going to be on TNT anymore, but we'll give them fishing poles and make a deal out of it. That by the time we get to next year, that there will be much more attention paid to making the event great, simply because it is the first of something that is part of a $76 billion deal, and it's on national TV. It's on NBC. And so they're going to want to make it much, much better. It's almost like this is the worst of, and hopefully it could turn into a much better spectacle TV show weekend than it was, just by virtue of them being on a new place, right? And wanting to impress. I again, that's glass half full. It sucked.
It did. And I'm glad we didn't have to, because I understand all the reactionary, this was awful thing, but I'm glad we didn't have to do that. I'm glad we didn't have to do a show on Tuesday, and I'm glad we had a great slate of games and a bunch of news to talk about today.
We have a ton to talk about. We're going to use the games that took place on Thursday night as a jump off to talk about a lot of these different teams, but we'd be remiss if we did not start with the biggest news yesterday. Absolutely, totally shocking. At about 11:30 Central yesterday, I was getting ready for my local show, and my producer yelped, "Oh my God!" And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Dude, Wemby's out for the season." And I was like, "What? Like, what is going on?" Like, it was honestly totally shocking, because so out of nowhere. And I'm sure that you've had kind of the same experience where, though they have not been playing games, we saw Wemby a lot in the All-Star weekend, and I'm all in on that Court of Gold. So he's been like, I've been watching him a bunch. I've been watching him talk. I've been thinking about him the second half of the season, or at least these last 30 games of the season. And then out of nowhere, it is announced that he is going to be out for the rest of the season. And I mean, immediate reaction is like, did he get injured like at a shoot around? Like, what in the world? How are you out?
He played in the All-Star game.
Yeah. How are you out? What happened between then and now? And the story comes out about him having deep vein thrombosis, a.k.a. a blood clot in his shoulder, which we have seen in the past. It cost Chris Bosh a career. We are obviously most hopeful that it is like the Brandon Ingram situation, who also had one in his shoulder and then was able to come back just fine.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing to be trifled with, and something that is very serious and well beyond just an injury. This is a health ailment that has taken place, and he was having one of the most unbelievable seasons. The ripple effects are absolutely enormous. But yesterday, that one felt, shocking and terrible news.
Yeah, and the initial reaction when you get the news is what happened, and then you find out it's a blood clot, and then you're like, oh, this can go a few different ways, and you have to be cautious with him, and it's particularly damaging because of the De'Aaron Fox move and just the way that he fit in so well, the way they look together, the way you could be a Spurs fan and see a path to competing, to playoffs. That piece was such an important piece for the future of Wemby and the Spurs. And there was sort of some excitement around the franchise. And the blood clot thing is so terrifying because, again, you can't go back and see him roll an ankle, come up lame, even a non-contact injury. He was just in the All-Star game when it happened. I was like, was he on that Delta flight that flipped upside down? Like, how could he possibly get injured? And once I got that information, I decided to do some research, Chris Vernon. I am not yet an officially licensed medical practitioner. However, I am in the middle of the show The Pit on HBO, so I do have some expertise. And I reached out to two people in my life to get some color on this, and I'm actually being serious. One of my rec league is a bunch of ER doctors, and I was texting with my friend about it. Like, what is this? What could it be? And he's like, it could just be bad luck, and it could be whatever. Here's how it works, and here's how it happens. And then I also spoke to an old friend of mine from high school named Sadie. And Sadie had a blood clot in her shoulder as well. Mainly blood clots happen in the legs. And the concern is that the clots will travel to lungs, heart, brain, and obviously cause real problems. And Sadie had something called Paget-Schroeder disease, which is it's a syndrome that also became known as effort-induced thrombosis, right? What it is it's because of the repetitive motion of the arm. And think about Victor Wembanyama's right shoulder. Repetitive motion, getting shot after shot after shot, blocking shots, defending shots. Like, you always see him with his hand above his head. And what that can do is sort of like in between your collarbone and your highest rib, it can sort of like trap the veins, right? And I'm not saying this is what he has. But what I am saying is after talking to someone who had a similar ailment and talking to a doctor, it certainly checks a lot of the boxes because it's such a rare thing to have a shoulder clot. But the repetitive motion of it all, like it happened once to a viola player. Think about the right arm there. Yeah. And it happened to like a Matt Harvey, a pitcher. Think about the shoulder there. Serena Williams, think about what she does with her arms. And I really think that this is what it is. And I also think that now I should be qualified to be a medical professional based on this extensive research that I've now presented to the Mismatch audience.
You should at least be able to be on that Netflix show.
Which? Oh, The Pit?
Yeah.
It's on HBO. It's excellent. It's very stressful. I have some notes about some of the story structure and the reality of it all, but we can do that on a different pod. Prestige TV.
You know what? One of my buddies just recommended that to me the other day. Good. He said it's got the guy that was in ER or something on there. And
yeah. I never watched ER, but apparently it's the same guy playing the same role in a different hospital.
They typecast him, right? This guy is he's an emergency room guy.
It's also a ton of medical jargon. I'm like, it's like you might as well be speaking a different language. I have no idea what you're talking about. But back to Wemby, we can all just hope that, they give him some blood thinners and he passed tests in the future and he comes back next season good as gold. And perhaps this is going to give them a better lottery pick.
This is also a guy which you see when you're watching Court of Gold, and we have become well aware of in his first 2 years in the NBA, takes his health and health management extremely seriously, right?
Yes.
And so this is not a guy that you have to worry about in the least, will not do literally everything he possibly can to make this right and do, I mean, this guy is so disciplined with everything that he does. And so here's hoping that everything turns out fine. It is much more like the Brandon Ingram situation where it's just a blip, something that happened, something that was able to be fixed, and then he's able to go on.
Surgery. If I'm not mistaken, I think Brandon Ingram had a surgery to sort of like get the bone thing figured out with that Paget shorter syndrome.
He was fine.
I'm glad.
But he was fine.
Look at him. I'm glad you mentioned the Court of Gold thing with Wemby in particular because, he's like a likable guy. He's kind of quirky. He's really well spoken. He's kind of funny. Like he's always good in interviews. He's put together. He's disciplined. He's great. But I love him so much more after watching this. And there's a juxtaposition of watching Joel Embiid lose to the Raptors and sort of cry in the tunnel, and watching Wemby lose to the dream team.
I know.
Like he lost to LeBron, Steph, and KD, and he had like Nick Batum and Rudy Gobert and Yabu, and he is so disappointed. He's so crushed that he didn't bring the gold medal to that home fan. And all the other guys were like, look, man, we played great. You played great. We went up against the dream team. Like he took no consolation in that whatsoever. He wanted to win. He expected to win. And he was absolutely devastated that they did not win against the best players in the world. That it made me love him that much more.
Also feels like a superhero origin story, right?
Yes. At the end, he says, look out, next couple
years.
I
just got my heart ripped out of my chest. This will never happen again, right?
Yes.
And then comes back with a vengeance. And of course, it's going to be in the States the next time around. So it's like, here's the get back, right? The next time around. And so we got to worry about them. There's no way around that.
Oh, yeah.
We got to worry about them by the next time those Olympics come around. Interestingly enough, the team that the Spurs beat last night, the Suns, who are in a bad way.
Bad.
I don't know how you felt regarding this Court of Gold that we've watched. Outside of Wemby, which you made love so much more, I thought maybe the best public relations possible for Kevin Durant. How likable is he in that?
Oh, God.
The interviews are so good. The game, like obviously watching him in the games makes you remember after he was out for a month and he comes back and he has that game against Serbia. But he's like the United States player that's featured the most in sit-down interviews, and in between him talking about looking up in the stands and him getting super emotional and him getting emotional about how he grew up and about how there's so much hate in the world and how basketball really saved his life and how much he loved it and everything. Like, you're watching that. I don't know how anybody could come away from that show having any other emotion than, I love this guy. Like, I love this guy. Like, I think it's the best thing that Kevin Durant's ever been a part of in his whole career, probably, because it's so authentic, it's so real, and it makes you like him so much more.
And he's just so unfiltered. And we know this from his social media presence. Like he'll interact with fans on X or Twitter, whatever calling it. And in the interview, it's no different. He's not polished, media trained. I'm going to give you the right answer that I've been taught to give and not let you in. He lets you all the way in and he becomes more likable for it. But there is nothing that's the off the court stuff. Watching the Serbian national team at halftime just really paints a picture of what an unstoppable scoring force Kevin Durant is, because it's all they can talk about. And it's again a team of LeBron, Embiid, Tatum, Steph, and all they could. And then the Serbian coach being like, "This is all my fault. I should have never had you pick up Kevin Durant. My fault."
I laughed so hard when Jokic, who is not one for many words, is saying, like, I'm paraphrasing, but it's basically like, if you see Bam Adebayo and you see Kevin Durant, take Kevin Durant.
Cover Kevin Durant. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you're making the wrong choice here.
Yes.
If Bam Adebayo beats us, then Bam Adebayo beats us. But, like, don't leave him. Don't leave this guy.
It's fun to watch Jokic because we talk so much about how LeBron's basketball IQ and how he knows the other team's plays and, Giannis's work ethic and everything. And Jokic is kind of just like, oh, ho-hum, he loves horses. He's just naturally gifted at this sport. But he really does think the game in a way, and it's fun to hear him talk the game in that way as well.
Well, it's crazy because Durant still, at his age, having an unbelievable season. His scoring and numbers look almost identical to every other year of his career. And yet that team is just a bad basketball team. I mean, they are 25th, I think, in defense. They've got a negative point differential. They're a terrible offensive rebounding team, so they get no extra possessions. So, like, the one thing is if you're not good defensively, at least be able to get yourself some extra possessions on the offensive end because you're trying to create. So you're not at a disadvantage possession-wise every night, and you're not a good defensive rebounding team. You're a terrible offensive rebounding team, so you lose that. Then you're not good defensively, and, they play about even with Durant on the court, but they lose by 2 points per 100 possessions with Booker on the court this year, and they lose by 7 when Beal's on the court this year. And obviously when you've got 3 players like that, they've all got to be awesome and simultaneously awesome to make up for the fact that you are going to be at a depth disadvantage on a regular basis. And so I thought that they might be one of those teams that could sneak into the play-in, but man, you watch them in a game like last night, Spurs without Wemby, and obviously I saw them right before the All-Star break against Memphis. And it's like, geez, man, it's hard to see how they play 3-4 games better than their peers because that's kind of the position you're in. You've got to play 3 or 4 games better than some of your peers. And so I think there could be some jockeying around in the Western Conference standings, but within 24 hours, I think we're almost to the point where it feels like, geez, not only are the Spurs not going to be in the mix for this play-in, which we would have said they are 24 hours ago, but it's hard to see the Suns being really in the mix for that play-in.
I think if Dallas really has a free fall,
maybe
it could make it possible. Because when I'm looking at it, and I was thinking the same thing, and I was like, how do the Suns get to the 10? And I think without Anthony Davis, there's just not enough there, and they could take that spot if Dallas sort
That's
of
fair.
falls
because if they
down.
went 3-7 or 2-8, you
exactly.
go.
It doesn't take 5-5, and then you're right there. Right. So I don't think they're playing good basketball. I don't think they'll field this team with these 3 stars next season. But I think just because of the injury to Anthony Davis, Dallas probably will not be able to maintain their spot. But who knows?
Let me tell you something about Phoenix that made me a little. It gave me a different perspective. Okay, so during the All-Star break, I went to Scottsdale, Arizona, Phoenix/Scottsdale.
Let's do some recon on the Suns. Boots on the ground.
I was not doing any recon on the Suns, though I did talk to Suns fans who were just despondent. Like they're like, I don't understand why we're not good. We have 2 of the best players in the world, right? And so it's kind of depressing to talk to Suns fans. But I will say, and this is 3rd time I think I've been to that area, I am always blown away. You get to that airport or you go to anywhere around there. You go to a mall, you go to a gas station, you go whatever. The Suns are omnipresent, like everywhere. You see Suns gear. You see Booker stuff. You see Durant stuff. Like, it is just everywhere. And it makes it all the more depressing because I'm like, this is like some cities you touch down in and like, you don't have an awareness that there's like sports teams. And you would think, like, there's not, like, I know that the Cardinals play in Glendale or whatever. Like, you'll see, like, a Kyler Murray or a Marvin Harrison Jr. or something. And you will see some people, like, wearing, like, Diamondbacks hats, or you'll see, like, a Diamondbacks, polo shirt or something like that. But it's nothing like the Suns. The Suns are everywhere I went. I saw Suns gear. It was crazy. Or a Durant something, or a Booker something, or whatever. And I'm like, this is super depressing because they are in here. Like, they are everywhere. It's like the thing. If you're a sports fan, you go to any sports store, I mean, it's just rows and rows and rows of all kinds of Sun stuff. Yeah, then it's like just a mediocre to bad basketball team, yet they've got this massive star power.
It's broken. It's broken. It's absolutely broken. And whether they make the 10 seed or not, you're going to have to win 2 playing games, and then you're going to have to beat the Thunder. So Good luck with that.
A couple other things we need to talk about. LeBron James, man, what an unbelievable recovery. Because I was really worried about his injury that kept him out of All-Star Weekend. And then
it's miraculous.
You see him tomahawking on Mark Williams, and you're like, wow. Thank God. I was really worried that ankle injury was going to keep him out a long time.
Yeah, I'm surprised he's not out for the month. And then he played back-to-back. Wow. It's crazy.
I mean, if you're Adam Silver, you have to be like, dude, come on. Really? Like,
whoa.
Can you make a bigger mockery of the weekend that I tried to make important?
And am I really supposed to believe that he like suited up on Sunday morning and like tried to give it a go and just looked at the trainer and was just like, I gave it my all. Can't do it.
Meanwhile,
and then plays a back-to-back 2 days later.
Well, meanwhile, makes a mockery of All-Star Weekend and has his agency mate on the broadcast talking about what a piece of crap it is. He's got Draymond Green literally at the desk. Like, can you imagine if in the middle of The Pit, you said that's a new show you're watching, right?
Yeah, I'm watching The Pit, sure.
Say Court of Gold, something that we mentioned earlier. Imagine if in Court of Gold, they like paused in the middle of it and they're like, hey, we just want to remind you, this thing you're watching sucks.
Well, it's not just that. It's the whole point.
Back to it.
The whole point of a pre-game show is to get you excited to watch the show. It's like he's doing a pre-game show. Shout out to my guy, Jalen Rose, who was also there. Looking great. Haircut looks good. And it's just like, bro, we're leading into this broadcast. You're supposed to sort of build anticipation and excitement, and that is not how you do it whatsoever. But, man,
Go ahead.
what I found interesting is I don't think LeBron planned on playing in the back-to-back, but I think he said, we can't get Luka, beat the Jazz, lose to the Jazz, lose to the Hornets, and then lose to the Blazers. Like, I think that was an unplanned. Like, and even JJ said he wasn't sure when he went to bed the night before if LeBron was playing the next day. I think that was he said, we need a win here. We need one.
Well, he was Austin Reeves had 32 and 7. But the big thing is we watched them come out the first night post All-Star and lose to the Hornets, as you mentioned. And boy, it was a glimpse into the future, possibly, which is something they're going to have to figure out. And that is, what are we going to do when they just put a target on Luka and try to put him in literally every single action every time? Because they do not have the defensive reinforcements that Dallas had. Right, they had Derek Jones Jr. and P.J. Washington flying around on the wings. They had
DFS
a super,
was on the Lakers,
super active big guy, that was kind of cleaning stuff up behind them. Whether it was Gafford, whether it was Lively, and so they don't have the same kind of defensive personnel nor intensity. And then on the offensive end, you got some figuring out to do, because what is Luka doing when LeBron's got the ball, right? Like. This is there were times where I was reminded of that old Houston thing where it was like when Chris Paul or Russell Westbrook had the ball and you're like, Is James Harden really just going to stand there?
I'm surprised James Harden didn't just sit down. That's the level of effort that he was putting in.
Right.
He wouldn't cut. He wouldn't screen. He wouldn't try to get offensive rebound. But I think when you started, you hit the nail on the head is we can criticize Nico Harrison. Fine. There's going to be no shortage of that. But what you can't criticize is what he did yesterday was build a team around Luka that made sense. The Lakers don't have a team around Luka that makes sense because Luka just fell in their lap. You know what I mean? Like, so it's not like this is a structure that is going to work moving forward. Luka fell in their lap, so they have obvious problems and shortcomings, particularly on the defensive end. But I think over time, that'll get ironed out with roster building. But right now, as you mentioned, come playoff time, you're going to say, where's 77? Bring him to me. Whoever 77's covering, bring him to me. We've seen it time and time again in the playoffs. And I also think that in that Hornets game in particular, and I'm not really going to go into this whole like Luka's out of shape thing, but the fact of the matter is Luka did not play for the longest stretch of his career. So he is not in basketball shape at the moment. And that showed it was not playing for whatever it was, 6 weeks. So he's out of shape. And then coming off the All-Star break where he legitimately said, like, yeah, I didn't think about basketball. And then he's in his Hornets game where they're targeting him. It was sort of a recipe for disaster. And his performance is pretty disastrous.
Yeah. Not great so far, but look, he's Luka Doncic. Okay. I think everybody expects
Before we do move on, though,
yep,
we're not doing love and load this week, but I absolutely love Toumani Camara. I love him so much. I'm watching the game last night, and there are stretches where I'm like, is he like the 8th best wing in the league? I'm just like, there are stretches. I think he had like 19 last night, and I'm watching the game. I was like, this guy is good, man. He is good.
Long, athletic, super defensive intensity.
I love him.
Yeah. The Bucks beat the Clippers last night, and the big story with the Bucks was before the Wemby story broke yesterday morning. The first big story was that Bobby Portis was going to be out for 25 games for violating the league's substance abuse policy. And it was a truly unbelievable story. Like, there have been so many times, whether it is in the NFL or whether it has been in Major League Baseball over the course of the last 20 years, when I've looked at these stories and I meet them with an epic eye roll whenever the excuse comes out. It's like, come on, bro. Just keep it real with me. Just tell. I will accept. Like I've told a story many times. Years ago, there was this guy. His name was Matt Lawton, and he was like he was an outfielder and he had signed with the Yankees. And he got busted, and he came out. And the reason I remember him to this day is because I was like, how refreshing. He was basically like, I did it. I'm sorry. I wasn't good enough to play on the AAA Yankees at this point, much less the New York Yankees. And I am really sorry for the decision that I made. But yeah, like I took steroids. And it's like, wow. Like, all right, like I could be mad at you. Like, I guess I could be mad at you, but like, I get it. Like, he was just like, here was my situation. Here's why I did it. I'm sorry. And so, but the reason I remember that all these years later is because no one ever says that. They always say, no. I took something I didn't know what I took, or I took this because of some cockamamie reason, when really it's just masking what I actually am taking because everybody knows that I'm on performance-enhancing drugs. In this case, Mark Bartelstein, who is a fantastic agent, comes out with an unbelievably worded statement that I totally bought. Like, I read it and I was like, this makes all the sense in the world, because it's like he took this painkiller. Somebody gave him a painkiller.
It's basically he took Toradol instead of Tramadol, right? And
no, he took Tramadol.
I don't know the difference. Again, I'm working on my medical license as we covered earlier. Yeah. He had the one you're supposed to take. and his assistant had a prescription for the one you're not supposed to take, and supposedly his assistant is the one that gave him the one you're not supposed to take, and it was a mistake.
Yes.
An honest mistake. Now, you shouldn't be taking prescription drugs that aren't prescribed to you, right? And
Correct.
I would say that the agent's statement was believable, but what I liked is it was also paired with Portis' statement, which was like, I apologize to my teammates and my fans, and I'm going to get back ready to play.
Yes.
You know what I mean? He didn't do this whole like victimize, like not my fault, I'm the victim here thing. And the agent sort of did that for him, but he was like, he went down the middle with like, I'm going to get ready to play. I apologize. It sucks.
Walk me through the Giannis Shams report.
Well, here's what I like. Because we've both been in the media for a long time, right? And over the All-Star break, Giannis is talking to like some Greek outlet. And he says the following so they're like, would you ever ask for a trade out of Milwaukee? And again, this is All-Star weekend. He says, quote, I don't think I would ever text and ask for a trade. I'm not this kind of guy. They would have to kick me out, right? So that's him. That's Giannis himself being like, nope, I don't ask for trades. They're going to have to kick me out of this place. And then 24 hours later, Shams says it's something to keep an eye on. He loves Milwaukee, but he loves winning more. So if he feels like he can't win in Milwaukee, then he might leave. And while those two statements might seem to be in juxtaposition of each other, I think they can both be true. I do think it's a situation to monitor. I do think Shams is correct. If they get swept in the first round, remember what happened last time? They lost in the first round. If they get swept in the first round, I think that Giannis could say, look, I don't know if this Robin Lopez, Dame Lillard core is really going to be where I'm going to spend my prime, and dramatic change could be made. And I also think that right now, if you ask Giannis, he says, I'm not the type of guy to ask for a trade. I think that can all be true.
I think that, yes, of course, anytime that you get beat in the first round, that kind of stuff is always going to come up. But one of the things that I will give Milwaukee credit for is they have consistently attempted to go out of their way to build out to make him happy, right? Like we're re-signing these guys because we know we're trading for Dame because, and so it's like they are consistently making moves. They're not static, and it's not, and you can't very rarely say like some teams have those guys and you can feel like they are taking them for granted and maybe not building out or constantly attempting to improve or make it a great situation for the star. But they routinely get him to re-up and sign extensions because they show the effort, right? They show the effort. They're paying the money for the players. They're making the deals for the players. They just tried again at the trade deadline with the whole, Middleton Kuzma deal. And so I do think that one of the things that players always want is, are you showing an effort? Now, in the end, the results are all that matters, but you can't fairly look at them and say they aren't constantly attempting to evolve and make it a situation where he can win and not just say, hey, we've got this guy. But, I think it's fair. You could look back at, say, the best of Embiid right now appears to be behind us. And I think that you could go back in time and you could go, man, should have gone all in and built out when we had the chance, right? Because he didn't have his best supporting cast. And that because, you never know when it's going to end. But I do feel like each and every year they attempt to give him a chance to win by building out a roster around him. And so I don't know. Anytime a great player is in a small market, this is going to happen. We're going to get to another story like that in a little bit.
I will say this about Giannis is if I'm the Bucks, let's just say whatever, they lose to the Pacers in the first round. Okay. Let's just say that's what happens. If I am the Bucks, I'm saying, okay, we will do whatever it takes to make this team better. With Giannis is the only fixed variable in the equation.
Correct.
Giannis is the only person who's not off the table. We are not trading Giannis Antetokounmpo. We're not doing that. But everybody else is on the table. And if I'm the owner, I'm like, GM, come to me with any idea that does not involve Giannis. Anything. And as you said before, they've done that in the past. What they really haven't done is draft well, if you really want to look at their problems.
Yep. Well, and just a total waste of one this past year, where that can really change your trajectory as a franchise if you're able to hit on those 20s picks. But, I mean, even at the time, I remember, Kevin O'Connor, who was on this show with me, came on and just tore them apart for their draft pick. They're like, you took the youngest guy in the draft who cannot help you now, and Doc Rivers is never going to play. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And, of course, that guy's already been traded.
Yep.
He's already been traded. And it's like, what the heck? I mean, just a waste. Whereas you can look and say, hey, if they would have drafted somebody in the 20s, like, it's not impossible to find somebody that could have helped you and at least been a role player for you on a great contract, because those are the best values, is getting guys late first, second, or undrafted, and then being able to sign them to, long-term low contracts, or at least 3 or 4 years. The Pacers beat the Grizzlies last night, and
Verno.
It was worrisome. It was very worrisome. It was very worrisome, Jacoby. It was.
Verno, listen. We're at the sort of like podcast. People have been listening for a while. You're comfortable. We're comfortable.
Yeah.
People want to hear from you because it looked really bad. Didn't they give up 50 and a quarter or something? It looked really, really bad.
First quarter was great.
From someone on the inside.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
I think the first quarter was great. I thought it was an absolute mess. I think that this team, many times, and especially when they play against better competition, and I'm putting the Pacers solidly in that mix. If you go look at the Pacers, they have played great basketball over the course of the last 20 games. They're like 15-5, I think. They were, at one point, 16-18 coming into 2025, and they have been one of the better basketball teams in the NBA since the calendar turned. And so, on one hand, I want to give them credit for being that. On the other, I will say that when Memphis has played against good teams, it has happened too often that Morant gets frustrated at the beginning of the game or at some point in the game, maybe for a spurt will turn back into himself, but all too often has this, he just seems like down, and he will just not even get the ball from out of bounds, and he'll just run up the court and run to the corner. And just kind of like be like, okay, you guys do it. And it's like, I don't understand. Memphis has no chance of achieving whatever their ceiling is totally dependent on him being great and not good, great. And he has been downright bad more often than not against the best teams this year. It has been totally bizarre because obviously I've watched every single game in his career, and I have just found myself constantly asking people, like, what is going on? Like, is there something going on with him, like, off the court? Is it like he just does not seem to have that killer instinct, that passion that made him so great. And I don't know if it's because, at the beginning I thought, geez, he wanted so badly for this to be like the revenge season, right? Like everybody's forgotten about me. Everybody's put me way down their list. They've forgotten how good I am. And then all of that was torn away by injury, right? you look up and you can't make the All-Star team and you can't make All-NBA, and all of these goals that you had set for yourself have probably been ripped away. But that's individual stuff. In the end, your team goals are still available, and I just don't know if the shoulder that he hurt when he ran into Daniel Tice still bothers him. It is so perplexing to watch him in these games for segments of time just run to the corner or to the dunker spot. And you're like, what the hell is going on?
And
what is going on?
Well, here are my questions for you. Is what happened to Ja Morant that was just an absolute force finishing at the rim? Like, he would just easily get past his man, and then he would take on the help defender and score over them or get an and one, and repeatedly do that over and over again. There were some numbers where he basically had like the rim scoring of like a prime DeAndre Jordan. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then if it wasn't that, it was like getting to the foul line or the elbow and hitting that mid-range shot. And I just don't see any of that. And I don't ever see like the 35-point game, the 37-point game, the 20-point quarter. Like it just feels like he's hurt. It's the only thing that makes any sense.
I mean, right before the All-Star break, he showed up and had this 27-point game in Phoenix, and I was like, oh, maybe we're back on the right track, right? Jaren Jackson's starting to get double-teamed a lot now. Teams start to look at the whiteboard, and they go, okay, the guy we got to stop is Jaren Jackson Jr. because the other guy's not doing as much. And it's like, well, if you go back to single covering Ja, you're going to have a real problem on your hands.
Are you?
I mean, you did in Phoenix. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Like,
but he used to have 27 every night, Verno.
I know.
He used to have 27 every night. You can't point to a game and be like, that's the old Ja. One time in Phoenix, he had 27 points. Because last night he had 14, looked kind of disinterested and sort of like disappointed.
That's the problem. My problem is not the play. It's the body language. And in games like that, the whole team feeds off of him.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you're down, the whole team's going to be down. If you're up and bouncing around and beating your chest and grabbing your crotch, that's what the whole team's going to do. And so they got to
especially with a young team. Especially with a young team.
Look, you're always 24 hours away, as we say, from changing people's minds. They have that Memphis-Orlando game is a really good one tonight.
Oh, yeah.
They're playing against each other. And Franz,
Orlando, win last night.
I read this morning he has got the highest scoring average since McGrady. You believe that?
Wow. Yeah,
25 a game.
Paolo had a huge night last night against the Hawks, too.
And Paolo did have a huge night. And Orlando's one of those teams that has desperately needed to get it back together post All-Star break. But, yeah, we will see.
Man. It's tough.
The Nuggets, they beat up on the Hornets. And the reason that this is fascinating is because their win streak continues. Murray has really gotten going. And Christian Brown, been great for them. I was reading an article about them this morning that said he's leading the NBA in transition points, and he's averaging
Christian Brown?
Yes. And he's averaging 15 points a game, shooting 58%. Yes. Yes. He's having a great
transition
season.
Points? Wow.
He's having
I'm
a
trying
great
to think
year.
who else. I mean, wouldn't Giannis be leading the league in transition points?
You would think
like
so.
Josh Hart or something, like, you know what I mean? Like
you would think so. Christian Brown, that's your answer.
Wow.
He's been
I
fantastic.
think the story is really Murray. That's the story.
For sure.
The story is Murray. I mean, because on this win streak, they have the 1-2 duo that brought them the Larry O'Brien trophy. And they are all cylinders. And Jokic, again, the story is Murray, but 29, 17, and 9. And then I was looking at it, and I saw this online today as I was prepping for the show about the MVP, right? Do you remember when it used to be the Sixers are going to Denver and then Embiid wouldn't play? And we would have these sort of like late season tight MVP race head-to-head games. March 9th, March 10th, 2 bleeping nights in a row, we get Shea versus Jokic, both in Oklahoma. So this is end of the season, tight MVP race.
Home back to back.
We get 2 nights back to back. head to head. This is a very close MVP race, and that's going to sway it. That is basically like the MVP Cup right there. Those 2 nights, I can't wait for that. That will decide the MVP race. You can assume that SGA and Jokic are going to continue to perform the way that they have because they are 2 of the most consistent performers in the entire league, which is why they're the top 2 MVP candidates. They go head-to-head back-to-back nights, not one night. They go back-to-back nights on the 9th and the 10th. People are going to really start talking about this, but just remember, this is the MVP Cup. We need to start marketing this now. Whatever, Adam Silver, you want people to pay attention to the league? You want the ratings to go up? Start talking about these 2 games right now.
Jokic hit 6 threes last night, and I saw he is top 5 in the NBA in points, rebounds, assists, steals, and 3-point percentage. It's like, come on, can somebody else have something?
I mean,
what?
I always knew he could hit threes, but I never thought he would be like the 4th best 3-point shooter in the NBA. You know what I mean?
I know.
It's ridiculous.
Outrageous. Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
Outrageous. And so they kept on cracking.
I don't know if you noticed, Verno, combined with the Grizzlies' loss, if you take a look at the standings, they're number 2.
They are number 2. And look, if you go look at Memphis' schedule, they're going to have a hard time hanging on to their spot or even 2 and 3.
I can't see the Lakers or the Rockets overtaking the Grizzlies. I think that says more about the Lakers than the Rockets.
Maybe so.
I just don't see. The Rockets haven't been playing well the last month. If the Lakers could go on some magical thing where Luka and LeBron figure it out and have a mind meld and they win 10 in a row, I can see that happening. But I think that's the only threat underneath you right in the standings right now.
You and I were texting during the Knicks Bulls game last night. Karl-Anthony Towns has been just absolutely otherworldly for the Knicks this year.
Stupid.
I mean, 32 and 18, and he surpassed Jokic as the most 30-plus, 15-plus rebound games this year.
Really?
Yes. He has more 30-point, 15 rebound games than anyone.
Well, I always say it's not what you do, it's how you do it. We're in overtime. We found ourselves in overtime because Mikal Bridges made an amazing defensive play on Vucevic. They should have lost the game.
Amazing defensive play. Also absolutely disgusting by Vucci Main, who I'm a fan of.
Just think
if you've got him pinned under the basket like that, you can't get blocked.
I think Vucci Main was like, oh, this is a bucket. There's no chance he's going to, oh, shit. I think that's how it went. I think he was just so comfortable that we drew up the play for this to happen. I've got Mikal Bridges on me. This is going exactly how we drew it up. There's no chance he's going to block my, oh, whoops. But back to Cat is in overtime, it was basically the Karl-Anthony Towns show. It's one thing to get 32, but if you don't show up in overtime and Jalen Brunson takes us home, it's fine. But it was just we need buckets. We need this win. We found ourselves in overtime at home after the All-Star break against a team that we should be beating, and give the ball to Cat and he gets it done. It was a really impressive performance from Cat.
Yeah. And a couple big misses. The butt-naked Lonzo 3 from the top of the key.
With the rhythm dribble,
they could have won the game.
Too open.
That was tough.
It was just too open. I mean, it's
too open.
I feel bad for Lonzo. I also want to give a big shout to LeVar Ball.
Yeah.
TMZ reports that for some health reason he had his foot amputated, and first of all, it's terrible. And just the picture of him in a wheelchair, literally with a missing foot, but a huge smile on his face, is just the epitome of LeVar Ball. Yep. You know what I mean? He's just so positive that, and obviously we wish him the best in recovery and whatever happened. I hope it is not a continuing ailment, but to lose a foot and to be just ear to ear smiling about it is just so LeVar Ball.
I got to say, Jacoby, last night I was settling in to turn on the games and I pulled up the scores to see where I was on the scores. And when I pulled up Sixers Celtics, I was in absolute, complete utter disbelief that all of those 76ers were playing in the game. I was like, really? As soon as I saw the box score, I was like, wait, George, Maxey, and Embiid, they're all playing? And then I got the Peyton Pritchard show.
Yep.
Peyton Pritchard just mowed them down, the 76ers, and then you've got these super depressing Embiid quotes after the game.
About quotes during the game, he had just depressing possessions.
I mean, how he's going to have to take care of this knee because, like, theoretically, we're coming off the All-Star break. He just had all that time off of it.
He looks worse.
And, yeah. And then you come out, and it's like, I think everybody was super hopeful. It's like, okay, obviously he's only played 18 of their 50-something games or whatever, but maybe something can be done during this time off. Maybe him just being able to have an extra week and a half to totally recover, as if he hasn't had a week and a half over and over again throughout the year. But I think just coming out of the All-Star break, okay, stretch run, 20-something games the rest of the way. Maybe we're going to get to see Joel Embiid play basketball some down the stretch, and as they're trying to make it to a play-in position, and then obviously in the playoffs. But you watched last night, and that's the kind of team you've got to beat to be able to achieve whatever you want to achieve. I mean, that was embarrassing.
I was watching last night. I'm scratching my head. I'm like, this Sixers team is so bad. Like, they just look so bad. And I said to myself, I said, wait a second. I watched the same matchup on Christmas Day.
Yep.
Do you remember that game?
Yep.
And then that is when I said, those are the 76ers I thought that we were getting this year.
Yes.
They were great. It's the same floor, the same guys, the same uniforms, the same everything. But the team that I saw on Christmas and the team that I saw last night are just two completely different teams. If you're the Sixers, you're looking at it and you're saying, all right, the Bulls will probably fall out of the 10 spot. We'll climb into the play-in. And last year, we should have beat the Knicks.
Yep.
We got it out of the play, climbed out of the play-in, and they could convince themselves that there is sort of this puncher's chance thing going on this season. But if I was the 76ers' best friend, I'd be like, guys, you're 15 games below 500. You don't have a puncher's chance at anything.
Yep.
And if your best player, who you're investing $500 million in, needs surgery, get him the surgery so he can start that process now, pun intended.
Because
we can get him ready.
I mean, that knee is shot.
He looks like he can't even stand.
And you've brought up, you wonder if he didn't have on that Iron Man-esque knee brace, which is, it looks like he's lugging around 60 pounds on his knee. Like, if he took that brace off, you just wonder if he just fall. Like, it feels like it's holding him up.
Do you remember? I remember a series a couple years ago against the Nets. He was falling over like 12 times a game. And it was almost like he was being taught that the impact of falling is going to be better for his body than like keeping himself from falling and putting that kind of stress on his ligaments.
Yeah.
But man, this guy, it looks like he can't even stand when he gets the ball. Like, I feel bad for him now. Like, honestly, I like as a human being, I'm watching him out there being like, this is not the guy that Joel Embiid is as a basketball player.
He cannot be great under these circumstances.
No.
There's no chance.
No. Right? But again, remember Christmas? Christmas was like 2 months ago. It was 2 months ago. And they beat that team on that floor, and they looked like they were title contenders for a day. And yesterday, they looked like they should just shut the whole thing down.
You just saw the distance between those two. You saw the distance between those two teams. If we're sitting there and trying to convince yourself, like, hey, just get there, and you never know. It's like, bro, if Joel Embiid looks like that, they can't beat anybody.
And I don't want to let Paul George off the hook either. Like,
he has been terrible this year.
Come on, man. Like,
Truly.
I think we always focus on Embiid because he's the former MVP. He's the face of the franchise. He's the big money. But like the big free agent acquisition to come save the day, to take them over the top, to put them in that sort of like Eastern Finals trajectory has just not done it. Not doing it.
Clippers seem really smart right now.
They do.
Right? They seem really smart right now. Look at where the Clippers are. Look at the situation that they're in. And then you see what has, like, this last contract for Paul George. Man, you would at least think on the front end you would get amazing value out of it.
If you would have told us, like when we're doing our little like preseason pod.
Bro, how is Tobias Harris better?
It's just like, you know like the Sixers are going to be 20-35, and the Clippers are going to be, what are they, 31-34? What?
What if I would have told you that they're going to swap out Tobias Harris for Paul George? It's going to be a downgrade.
And they're going to regret it. They're going to regret it. Yeah.
Crazy. Obviously, we've got to see most of these teams already once. And we got a huge amount of games that are coming up this weekend. We will reconvene early next week where hopefully we don't get any more bad news. Yesterday was a super bad news day with the whole Portis suspension and the Wemby being out for the season. And so here's hoping that everybody can stay healthy.
We've got, obviously there's the March 9th and 10th NBA Cup games, but we've got Lakers Nuggets Saturday night. That's a big one. That's a big one. And I think that LeBron didn't plan on playing last night with an eye on that game. And I think that Luka also has an eye on that game. And I think that that's going to be one of those big, nationally televised, 8:30 on Saturday. Yep. Smoke them if you got them. Empty everything you have type of games that I can't wait to see.
Well, and this is the time where everybody's attention starts to turn to basketball.
Yep.
Honestly, like the Super Bowl's done.
No college football to go against. Yeah. No NFL playoff games. And you've got Jokic, LeBron, Luka all on the same floor.
And if you could fill the void by being mega entertaining down the stretch, you will be able to do great things for your league. We just saw it happen with hockey. There was the void that was there, and it became a wave. And by the time that thing came around last night, it felt like everyone was watching.
I can't even name these guys on either team.
And everybody was watching.
But I'm watching. I'm watching. It's 2-2. I was watching NBA, but then once I found out it was 2-2 in the third, I was like, okay, let's turn this thing on. Shout out to Sean McDonough. But man, I'm telling you, the NBA Cup games between the Thunder and the Nuggets are going to be absolutely huge. This game on Saturday night is going to be absolutely huge. Huge.
Yeah. Hopefully it turns out to be a great game too.
And this is huge for the Lakers too, because like, are you guys the team that lost to the Jazz and the Hornets with Luka and LeBron? Or are you the team that beat the Nuggets with Luka and LeBron? Like which team are you?
No, it'll say a lot because the Nuggets are the hottest team in the league. So heading into that. Thank you to our executive producer, Jesse Lopez, as always. And Jacoby, I'll talk to you next week.